Wait, did the Chicago Cubs win the 2023 offseason? Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Steve. I've been covering baseball at pretty much every level for almost a decade now. And I want to talk about the Chicago Cubs today. It's January as we're recording this, 2023, so we're like a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And it's just kind of wild how good the offseason has been for the Chicago Cubs.
I think when most people were looking at the Cubs offseason and they're like, oh, we want Carlos Correa, we want Trey Turner, you want those big names. And if you don't get a player like that, it's a disappointing offseason. But now looking into it, Dansby Swanson, Jameson Taillon, Cody Bellinger, I think it's a good offseason for the Cubs.
Let's just take a look at some of the additions they've had, and obviously one big notable exit. Let's start with the good. The Cubs add catcher Tucker Barnhart, who gives them a good, decent backup for Yan Gomes, or they'll be swapping back and forth all season. You obviously get Drew Smiley back on a multi-year contract after he had a pretty good 2022. Obviously, the big name, the big free agent coming to Chicago, Dansby Swanson. You already know what he brings to the table and is now a cornerstone of this team for years to come. That is just such a huge addition. I don't even need to get into how big of an addition that is. And of course, right behind him, you still have Nico Hoerner, who had a really good 2022 as well. Big free agent signing, Jameson Taillon. His numbers have gotten better. In 2022, his strikeout to walk rate was the second highest of his career since his rookie season in Pittsburgh. All his numbers got better in 2022. That strikeout to walk ratio is almost double the league average at this point. So he's getting more swings and misses. He's walking less guys, which is always going to be a good thing. On the same pitching front, Brad Boxberger. That's just a straight up good signing. It's just a good little fill-in piece that's just going to help things out. And of course, Cody Bellinger. This is one of the more interesting ones. This is the one that I'm keeping my eye on maybe the most heading into 2023 for the Chicago Cubs. You know what he can do. He's always going to be a strikeout guy. No ifs, ands, or buts. This guy's just going to strike out. He's been doing that since he was 19. But the power that this guy has, and when he gets hot, which I know, granted, it's been a while since that's happened for Cody, but the potential there is just, it's MVP. So having him in the outfield or at first base or DHing or filling in wherever need be, he gives you a great option. He's a good glove. And again, MVP potential. Would I anticipate that? Probably not. But maybe he needed a change of scenery. Maybe he needed a change of pace to switch it up, get out of Los Angeles and try something new. First time he's been outside of the Dodgers system. So this is going to be big for him. And it's going to be a big opportunity for him to showcase what he can do. And I'm sure he feels like he can get back to that true form. And then, of course, Trey Mancini. A Trey Mancini signing, yes, granted, 2023 wasn't 2022 for Trey Mancini. But, again, what you're getting for him and giving you more options. Of course, Eric Hosmer over at first is super temporary. But you look at Mancini and what he can do in the outfield, what he can do at first, maybe play a little bit of third as well. And then you throw in Matt Mevis into the mix, who was incredible in 2022 at the AAA level and below. Matt Mevis might be pretty legit and gives you really good depth.
Go by what I see, and it's absolutely for real. It is. And the reason I thought it was for real is because started off the season in high A, South Bend, hit 295, OPS of around 900. Went to Tennessee, hit around 300, OPS of just shy of 1,000. Came to Iowa, and his stats were even better. Walk rate increased, strikeout rate dropped, more home runs, more runs batted in. He had the most RBIs for a Cub in the minor league system in over a decade. That's more than Chris Bryant's minor league MVP season that he had. So I think from what I saw, it was legit. Obviously he needs to do that more, than over a course of 144 games. But I think he's a really talented hitter. I think that he's got power. I think that he's a guy right now, you get him up to the big leagues and he hits against righties, he will be able to hit 20 home runs. He'll be able to drive in 70 to 75 runs.
And that's not even considering what the Cubs have done at the minor league level. Ben DeLuzio, solid with Memphis at AAA last season. He gives you really good depth in the outfield. Miles Mastruoboni, maybe a super slept-on guy. Trade with Tampa Bay, get him from Durham. Durham was awesome last year. They won the AAA national title. Mastruoboni was one of the top hitters in the International League last year. He started the season in Baseball America, number 37 prospect in the Rays system, and after half of the year jumped up to number 20. Of course, you pick up right-hander Nick Neidert as well. He was great with Jacksonville, super good in the International League. He's struggling to strike out guys at the major league level, but hey, it's a big jump. A lot of guys go through that. So I wouldn't sleep on these minor league moves as well. Now, the obvious elephant in the room, losing Wilson Contreras. Like, you can't act like that isn't a big deal. Losing Wilson Contreras, not only just as a baseball player, is just losing him as a guy on the team, like a teammate. That's a big deal and a cornerstone of the Cubs. And losing him to the Cardinals, I'm sure for Cubs fans, doesn't feel good either. Of course, that's going to sting a little bit harder. And when you mix in that he wasn't traded at the deadline, one trade did end up falling through at the deadline in 2022. So you get nothing back aside from a draft pick. That does all sting. And I don't think we should gloss over that fact that that is a massive sticking point for a lot of Cubs fans. That's a loss. That is 100% a loss. Yes, again, you get Tucker Barnhart, but he's, let's be real, not Wilson Contreras. So it's tough. That is a tough loss. But when you take it all into consideration with everything else that the Cubs have done this offseason, I call it a major win.
That's a lot of shoes that they were able to fill. I think that they have more depth than most people and scouts and teams recognize.
Because you think about what they've done recently, right? Since 2022, since the 2022 offseason. Wow, Marcus Stroman, big sign. He's kind of on this like two-way street kind of thing where it's like, hey, if he wants to opt out, he can. He had a good 2022 as well. And Seiya Suzuki, like that was a great season for a rookie campaign. Like what more could you ask for out of Seiya Suzuki? I know that there are concerns in Chicago for their pitching staff, and depth is a big concern. They're not unique in that regard. You can ask almost any team and they're always going to be like, we need more pitching. We need more pitching. So that's not unique for the Chicago Cubs. I do understand that there is a little bit of worry in that regard, but they actually might be better than you think. Because don't forget, the Hayden Wesneski move, the Scott F. Ross for Hayden Wesneski move is actually really, really good. I got a chance to watch Hayden Wesneski pitch all last season at AAA before he got traded. And yes, there were a couple of starts that weren't great for him. That's pretty much every player ever. But when he was shining, he was legit one of the top pitchers in the league.
There's one guy who you saw last year. You wrote me a very lengthy email about really singing his praises in Hayden Wesneski, a guy who has the pitching ninja, sweeping slider, 95 to 97 mile per hour fastball, good cutter, and he could really make his bones going up to the big leagues. Pitching out of a swingman rotation reliever role or possibly being a starter. Just in terms of pure stuff, I was really impressed with Hayden. I mean, everything that you said checked all the boxes.
The swing and miss stuff, that big slider, it's something that has a lot of people very, very excited. So what have we learned about the Chicago Cubs heading into 2023? Well, they had some options, right? They have options and positions that they didn't really have before. You have multiple outfielders. You have multiple corner infielders. You have guys that can bounce around, guys that can DH. There are tons of options for the Chicago Cubs heading into 2023 that is just so much better than they were in 2022, right? Heading into that season. They just have more options to work with.
They have some guys in their system that I think other teams could be really interested in. They have a lot of outfield depth right now. They have Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Cody Bellinger right now as their outfield. That's pretty good. And then if you look at their minor league system, with the Brennan Davis, who at one point was the top-ranked prospect in the organization, with Pete Crow Armstrong, with Owen Casey, that's a lot of depth and not necessarily enough space for them. So could they make a trade for a top-flight starting pitcher? Could they make a trade for a back end of the bullpen arm? But if you are in contention, they do have the pieces right now to trade for a big-time back end of the bullpen arm.
And you got to remember, it's not just good for the Cubs, not just good for the Cubs fan base. This is good for the players too. Short contracts for these players with something to prove, right? That's just incentive for them to get better. They're heading already immediately into another contract year, or in 2 years are heading into a quick contract year. So these additions, again, aren't just good for the Cubs, but are good for those players as well. The only real loss here in 2023 is Wilson Contreras, which again, not to gloss over, but everything else feels like an add. Everything else feels like an upgrade heading into 2023. When you have guys that potentially could also skyrocket through the minors. I wouldn't count on that, but they can. You never know what's going to happen to those guys. Matt Mevis, we mentioned. Pete Crow Armstrong, maybe he makes it in 23. He's still super young. But there are guys now that they can not necessarily let off the gas pedal, but they don't have to worry so much about like, I have to get there now. They can kind of relax. Matt Mevis has some breathing room now. He has an extra year, quote unquote. Maybe he comes into spring training, has a great spring training, and fights his way to the starting lineup. And you got to remember, there was optimism already building a little bit in Chicagoland because of how the 2022 season finished. 39-31 in their last 70 games. 8 games over 5 on a team that wasn't supposed to do anything. Like, that's just enough to build optimism. Now you have all these offseason moves. Yo, the Cubs like straight up won the offseason.
In the National League Central, where every single team has some pros, but has some glaring weaknesses. I think it's a division that's up for grabs. I think that 88 wins could win that division. And I think the Cubs could be in the 80-win range. So I do think they can contend in the National League Central. That's the main caveat.
Are you excited for the Cubs? Are you a Cubs fan? And do you think that they did enough here for the 2023 season? Are you still jaded because of how the Baez, Rizzo, Bryant era ended? Like, do you have faith again in the Cubs front office? Let me know in the comments. Let me know down below. And let me know how you feel about these new videos. Remember, we're starting new stuff here on my YouTube channel. So thanks so much for checking me out, and consider subscribing for more content like this. All right, that's going to do it for me. You can follow me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Links are in the description below. Talk to you next time. Later.